you go and go to the doctor or the first time a medical physician described cancer, like they didn't explain, possibly 100% the mechanism behind, how the tumors grow inside. They just say, well, this is cancer,
Yeah.
And I would say, hey, but can you cure it? No, I can't. Oh, then you are a fraud, and I don't believe it.
Yeah. And I feel like, when I was younger, I used to think that films that didn't really spell out how things worked or didn't spell out the mechanism were somehow subpar. I mean, the idea that I would have liked David Lynch. I mean, I couldn't even wrap my head around the Mothman Prophecies film. I thought it was...
Really?
I thought it was bad. I mean, this is Josh reading about flesh and blood Bigfoot and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I didn't appreciate the dream logic. I really like, tight Christopher Nolan clockwork-esque sort of films, where everything's tight as a drum. And I think that there's still a value in that. They're still really interesting, but I think that there's something to be said for crafting a neat little box that all has its gears fitting in the right places. I think that's really that really takes talent. But as I get older, I find myself drawn more to films involving dream logic, and I think that that's kind of the way that I've become with a lot of paranormal encounters when I read them. Like if it has that sort of dream logic, I'm more inclined to think that it's genuine than as opposed to something having all its loose ends tied up.
Right. Well, I mean, so if someone's going to make up a story, they're not going to make up a crazy story. If they're intentionally trying to hoax you, they're going to make up something that they believe sounds real.
Bobla, sir. Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the same time, because it's dream logic, it's, if you don't accept the fact that some of these things involve altered states of consciousness and such, it doesn't make any sense. It's when you realize that the reality we all share is maybe not even the primary reality, that that these things start to make a little bit of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the one of the most overlooked answers is that altered state. It's a big part. It's a big part of the project that I'm working on, so it's really at the front of mind. But the alien abductions look like fairyland abductions, look like NDEs, look like most DMT trips, look like dreams, look like shamanic awakenings. I mean, they all have so many markers. It's that there's something there. I'm not saying that they are all the same thing, but there's something there that that's trying to tell us this is what lies at the core of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's almost like go ahead.
Or conversely, this is the way that the human psyche reacts when it encounters something that is outside the normal, quote unquote, frame of reference. So I don't know. It's going back to the series of our dear friend Greg Bishop. You encounter something that you don't know where to put it inside your little tidy mental boxes.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I'm 100% fine with that as an explanation. That's something that I think gets lost on a lot of people who say, "Oh, Josh thinks that it might just all be archetypes," but that's still borderline paranormal for me.
Oh yeah,
right.
That we're wired to work in that sort of way. Yeah.
Well, and we live in a culture that wants to label everything. That's the other problem. Like everything has to fit into a box, as you just said with like when you mentioned Greg, and so much of this stuff crosses those boxes so easily.
Yeah, yeah.
I had
that if we label something, that we have solved it. Oh, that's just a placebo effect. Okay, just because you put in a name doesn't mean you managed to explain how the mind can heal the body.
Right. And that part of it's almost ignored. It's just kind of like, oh, look, these people who didn't get the real drug had the same benefits, if not better results, than the people who got the real drug. Well, that's just the placebo effect.
Yeah, just placebo drives me, quote unquote, just placebo drives me up an effing wall.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, we'll ignore the implications that maybe the medicine really isn't doing anything, and it's the belief in the medicine that's doing something.
Yeah.
I had someone recently ask me about the big UFO sighting I had over Cayuga Lake, and he said, well, what do you think that was? And my honest answer is, I have no idea, because I'm not going to put a label on it. I don't know what it was. I don't have any data that can give me an answer to that other than it was a very bright bunch of lights. And I can't think of anything that fits what I saw, like any conventional thing that fits what I saw. But the minute I think you put a label on it is the minute you stop looking at all of those things. You know, now it's in a box, and you don't compare it to things that aren't in the same box.
Right. Yeah.
So it would be reasonable for someone to say, well, I think I saw a spaceship. And then it's like, you know, if I say then, well, you know, but it happened right in a very liminal part of my life. Well, why would you just see a spaceship at a liminal point of your life, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I keep on coming back to, like, if it's aliens, folks, it's really weird aliens. It's aliens that care about your spiritual, like that to me would be weirder than it being, you know, solely spirit phenomena.
Right.
Would be that it's like it would be weirder to me than just solely spirit phenomena or just solely archetypes or time slips. It will be weirder to me that it's flesh and blood aliens who are obsessed with our spirituality and can somehow contact our dead. That's weirder to me.
Yes.
If it is aliens, then I dare to say that it is closer, to use pop culture references, than it is closer to Jack Kirby than Gene Roddenberry. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had, and the other thing that people do, especially people who don't know a large amount about this stuff. I have a friend who, you know, he watches Ancient Aliens and stuff like that. And at some point UFOs came up and someone else said something about aliens. He goes, oh, they're not aliens. They're ultraterrestrials or however he phrased it. And I went, you're just replacing one unknown term with another.
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's something that really does drive me up a wall. Man, it's like the cranky old man hour here. But that's one of the reasons that I'm so hesitant to say that anything is interdimensional, because it's people say that like it's a place.
Yes.
You know, people say that like it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Loki slips into the time variance authority like he did on the first episode of the Loki show. Like that's not the way dimensions work. Like a true multiple dimension would make our heads explode. I don't know if we can really even wrap our heads around the way that it would. Like if you're living in Flatland, how do you wrap your head around a sphere? Like I don't think you can.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We're not set up to process that stuff.
Yeah. We don't even have the language for it.
Right.
It defies language even.
Exactly.
Shout out to Greg Bishop right there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, you're right.
Oh, that wasn't intentional?
No, it was completely intentional. I was being a smartass.
Okay, good. All right. And when you say interdimensional, are we talking about another parallel world, a slightly different world from this one, something completely, you know, I mean, the word itself is so ambiguous.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, Seriah, but
No,
like this, I mean, it's the other world. That's all it is. It's the other world in materialist clothing. Like that's all it is. We just completely swapped out an older concept that we've lived with for time immemorial for a concept that is poorer fitting that we've had for like 2 centuries or something. You know, that's what bugs me about it. Is because it's just we already had a term for this. We're making it more complicated than it needs to be in some ways.
Now, the ancient tradition Laird Scanton writes about, if he's correct on his interpretations, is kind of an interesting view of the other world, that we're sort of like connected to another universe. And, you know, one universe has perfect knowledge and inability to act, and the other has the ability to act but imperfect knowledge. And the one with perfect knowledge is trying to communicate with the one that can act. I mean, all right, that would be really weird and might be exactly what's happening.
I use that a lot, though. I think that there's personally for me, and the way that I conceptualize the paranormal, I think that there's something to that description, that Dogon description.
Yeah. There's that, and there's also, I mean, just the fact that John Keel points out in the Eighth Tower, that this stuff seems to move from like non-visible color spectrums, you know? So it could be that some of this stuff is here all the time. It's not interdimensional. It's just beyond our senses. Mm-hmm. It's vibrating at a level we don't actually perceive or interact with. And I've created silence.
No, I was just thinking about this because, I was thinking about the fact that the pineal gland is an eye, and it regulates melatonin based on light, and you have these anomalous lights and all the paranormal, and and how we've often pontificated on whether or not that's like the purest form of the other. And I kind of wonder if that's not what we see going on. There's these that is like the naked form of the other that operates on some spectrum that kicks in the pineal gland to create endogenous DMT, because in 2013 they proved that the pineal gland of rats contains some DMT. And if that's not what's happening, that's the unskinned version of the other. It hits us with light that dumps DMT, and then and then we start co-creating, and we get what we get.
That's a really interesting idea.
I feel like I've said it before, but maybe not.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that's sort of where I sit right now with a lot of this stuff, because it does seem like the lights are a common thing across everything.
Yes, yeah. Well, we did how many shows on lights?
Yeah, the only thing with that is I don't know if that's a realistic. I mean, how long does melatonin production take, and how quickly would that DMT, would the DMT dump be fast enough? You know what I mean?
So I know when I had Strassman on, he was saying that they weren't sure that DMT was actually created in the pineal gland. There was some evidence that it was actually created in the lungs, but the pineal gland is what allows it into the brain. So there may always be some level of DMT flowing through us, and the pineal gland just regulates how much of that can get into our system. Oh,
yeah, that's a good way to look at it too, actually. Yeah.
So I don't know if they've gotten any. It's been a few years since he's been on, so I don't know if any of that has changed.
It does seem that the pineal gland is somehow related to DMT. I mean, that's one of those things where there's so much circumstantial evidence across so many different cultures that I really do think that there's something to it. Now, whether or not the fluoride in your drinking water is calcifying your pineal gland, that's a different story. But
I mean, to be fair, there's no good reason to put fluoride in the drinking water.
Oh, I didn't say that. I'm just yeah. I heard something the other day that was talking about, could we decrease the rate of suicide by putting lithium into the drinking water?
Oh, yeah, there's an idea.
Yeah, right. What could possibly go wrong? But apparently in states that have more lithium naturally occurring in their water have less suicides.
Sure.
So I don't know.
But why does all the solutions we have, why is it always drugs? Why isn't it like fix the culture that creates people to want to kill themselves?
Oh, I agree. I mean, this is something that, you'll hear a lot of times that poverty is the driver of crime. But if you look at a lot of really poor, especially, indigenous neighborhoods, but like if you look at a lot of poor neighborhoods in places, it seems that you can have poor places that aren't filled with crime. It's really the deprivation of meaning in people's lives that is the